Abraham Lincoln was not assassinated. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty. This is the Christian Whistleblower Live. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. We appreciate you being here. And give me just 1 second. I see I need to adjust my... Okay, sorry about that. Had to adjust the camera. It was looking terrible. I couldn't do it. It would drive me crazy. Abraham Lincoln was not assassinated, ladies and gentlemen. This is part 2 of this great series. I invite you to go back and look at part 1 at your earliest convenience. We're proving it beyond the shadow of an objective doubt. Abraham Lincoln was not assassinated. It was the first of the false flags, maybe the first of the false flags, or at least the earliest one that we've looked at now. So, ladies and gentlemen, as always, tune yourself to the ideal human residence of the earth. Go to jeffreydaugherty.com, click on the Mistech logo or the Mistech tab. Get your Mistech bracelets. They put you at the Schumann resonance. They put your cells in harmony instead of chaos. We've got blood tests on the site to prove it. They'll make a difference in your life. We talked before about Lincoln being assassinated, and we will finish talking about it today, and we will prove it today. We talked about the Ford's Theater only holding 1,700 people. We talked about, as you can see here, the presidential box being in full view of the entire theater. Everybody would have heard the gunshot. There would have been, and this guy stands up on this rail, jumps, catches his feet, and the flag falls. A total of about 17 feet. This is the original stage level. Broke his leg, allegedly, and gave a little speech. Also, by the way, he had a 10, 12-inch knife, and then he scurries out the back. Of course, that's the way you do it if you just killed a president. You wouldn't go out the back and down and out in anonymity and safety. No, ladies and gentlemen, Abraham Lincoln was not assassinated. It was all a show, and we just went over Whitman's account. Why would he do the 15 to 18-foot drop? Why wouldn't he go back down the stage? People would have been in him. How could he do it with a knife in his hand? And why did he give a nice little speech before he was leaving and before anybody rushed the stage? So, and this is so typical, ladies and gentlemen, of what they do, and they being the powers that be. Following the assassination, the United States government bought Ford Theater, paid $100,000, which is about $5 million in today's money. An order was issued, no more public amusement between 1866 and 67, taken over by the military, served as a facility for the War Department. They closed, they tore down Sandy Hook. They tore down Columbine. I'm almost 100% sure. There's all of the shenanigans in Las Vegas, the shenanigans in Oklahoma City, after planned events, after staged events. They do everything they can. 9/11, they do everything that they can to deter any private or real investigation. And the best way to do that is to close the crime scene. And sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, the chat room is as good as the broadcast. That's why I encourage you, if you're watching on Twitter or if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're watching on Facebook, go to YouTube, jeffreydaugherty.com, or excuse me, go to YouTube, the Christian Whistleblower, and listen to some of these comments into the chat room today. Tracy Dyer says, I looked into a possible Whitman love affair, that being Walt Whitman, the poet. Found out that Whitman had a huge crush on him. Several poems, including the famous Captain, My Captain, was written by Whitman about Lincoln. And on the weirder side, I'm not sure if I'm down with this, Matt says that Lincoln was also Jefferson Davis. Of course, I said, bruh, come on. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we have some more really, really good stuff. Abraham Lincoln's original name may well have been Springsteen. Oh, that can never happen. Oh, you mean like Barry Soetoro becoming Barack Obama without reporting that he went by Barry Soetoro as required and then becoming president? Yeah, that could never happen. And Tracy says, you're correct. That's to hide that he's a Rothschild. And most likely an Old Testament enthusiast. He was probably a Jesuit crypto Old Testament enthusiast. Read between the lines, ladies and gentlemen. Read between the lines. Elizabeth says, very interesting. Nice to see you in the chat room. And we've got a lot. This is just the chat room at the this is before the show, ladies and gentlemen. This is before the show. Great, great stuff. Powerful stuff. So do go over and to YouTube and subscribe and make sure that you here's the spoiler alert. Everything's a lie. The Rich is absolutely right. Okay, so let's get back into our study today. I think it's great stuff, and I appreciate all of the great commentary and all of the great responses in the chat room. I really do appreciate you. Okay, back to the excitement, ladies and gentlemen. Boom. We talked about that. Let's talk about, since we already talked about that, what do you say we talk about this? John Wilkes Booth. It's about the end of the Civil War, but for the last 4 years, why wasn't Booth fighting in the Civil War? Why wasn't John Wilkes Booth fighting for the 4 years preceding the Lincoln assassination event? And why wasn't he fighting in the war during the Lincoln assassination event? If John Wilkes Booth was so pro-South, why wasn't he fighting for the South? If he was so pro-Confederate, why wasn't he fighting for the South? If he was living in the North in his 20s, able-bodied, why wasn't he drafted? Actors were not giving exemptions. And if you do a search on John Wilkes Booth being drafted, you'll be surprised at how whitewashed the subject is, both in the internet, on the internet, and in books. And of course, we're coming from the great teachings of, what's his name, Miles Mathis, with this program for you today. The fact of the matter is that John Wilkes Booth was very likely a Union spy. Now, I don't say that lightly. I don't just throw that out there without any corroboration. On December 2nd, 1859, John Wilkes Booth decided to enlist in the Richmond Greys. Booth was photographed standing in uniform near the scaffolding, and afterwards, during a hanging of a abolitionist, he indicated his support for the hanging. And by 1859, when he supposedly joined the Richmond Greys, he was already a rich and famous actor, making $500,000 a year in 1859, ladies and gentlemen. Do you really think that the Richmond Greys are going to allow a famous millionaire actor from the North to volunteer for a single event, then unvolunteer a few weeks later? Doesn't work like that. The Richmond Greys were the Confederate Army. Booth wasn't really a Richmond Grey. He was acting. He was an actor. And he was acting like a Richmond Grey. If the Richmond Greys didn't give him the uniform, Jeff, then who did? Good question. It's pretty obvious that John Wilkes Booth was a Union intelligence officer. Union intelligence gave him the uniform. And it's just one more piece of evidence indicating that Booth was working for Union intelligence the entire time. Now we'll go back to Walt Whitman's description of the events in the theater. And after Booth jumps down, hits the ground, says he had a sprained ankle. That doctor actually said he broke his fibula, pulls out a big knife. That's not a knife. No, this was a knife that he managed to not stab himself with after jumping from 18 feet, hitting the ground, rolling, wrapped up in the flag. Nobody jumps him. He gets up, gives a speech. And then, after a moment's hush, there was a scream. Ah! Mrs. Lincoln leans out of the booth, says he's killed the president. And the stage then fills with a crowd. The audience rushed upon it. At least the strong men did. The president's guard burst in, some 200. They stormed the house, charging the audience with fixed bayonets, muskets, and pistols. Wait a second, ladies and gentlemen. Let me read that again. So not only does Mrs. Lincoln politely wait for Booth to jump down, politely wait for Booth to finish his soliloquy before she screams, it was very polite of the men not to rush the stage until after John Wilkes Booth was finished with his little speech and hobbled off stage right. You know that if he really was shot in that booth, let's go back a few pictures. If he really was shot, this is what happened. He's in this booth. And if he really shot the president, everybody hears it. There's only, 1,700 people. It's a sound. It's built to make sure that sounds from the stage are heard by everybody, even whispers. So the gun goes off. Everybody looks up. There's Booth. These people would have rushed the stage. Remember, this was the stage level before. These people in the front row would have rushed the stage. If he'd have jumped into a crowd of men. Probably would have jumped right on a bayonet, which would have made him a tenor, right? No, he would have walked out the back, came down, and escaped while he probably would have tossed Lincoln on the stage or pushed Mrs. Lincoln over, even better, and then make his escape down the back and out and through the alley and over the river and through the woods to his grandmother's house he'd go. But none of that happened. He stood up here. He jumped down. He broke his leg. He unwrapped himself from the flag. He took out a knife, held it up, gave a little speech, ran off behind the flag. And then all these guys decided, then she decides to scream. And then people decide to rush the stage. And did you catch the fact, ladies and gentlemen? Did you catch the fact that there were 200 presidential guards that burst in? Burst in from where? The president of the United States in the Civil War is in a theater and they got 200 guards outside, 0 guards inside. Does that make sense to anyone? And when they burst in with bayonets, muskets, pistols, what happens? All hell breaks loose. All chaos breaks loose. And you know what doesn't happen? Nobody looks at the president's body. Nobody examines the wounds. Nobody goes up in that booth because the government, the army clears and sanitizes the scene pronto. No one got to look at the president. And it's a good thing because it was not the president, ladies and gentlemen. It was not the president. There's 200 presidential guards outside. There's 1 DC cop inside guarding the president. 1 DC cop inside guarding the president. Surely he was a crack. It was probably Officer John Rambo, right? Not so much. It was probably Officer Schwarzenegger. Nope, not so much. It was John Frederick Parker, a DC beat cop who, when Lincoln was shot, had snuck off to go get a drink at a bar. He was charged with dereliction of duty. He was charged with conduct unbecoming an officer several times before being assigned to guard the President of the United States, to be the only guy guarding the President of the United States. Reprimanded for drunk on duty, sleeping on streetcars while at work, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, visiting a brothel. Visiting a brothel. He was reprimanded, but he was never fired. And then he goes, and he's the only guy guarding the President of the United States. And he sneaks off to go get a drink or go get a little something else. Who knows what it was. And after this assassination took place and Parker was convicted of not being there when the president got shot, he was charged with neglect. He was charged with neglect of duty. He was tried. But it's a funny thing. The transcripts of the trial are in the same place that the telemetry data of the moon landing are. Lost, gone, never to be seen. And wonder of wonders, this is a guy that was cited for conduct unbecoming an officer, slept on duty, fucked on duty, still assigned to guard the president. President gets shot because he left his post to go get a beer, and the complaint is dismissed. And in spite of leaving his post the night that Lincoln was shot, Parker was afterwards still assigned to work security at the White House. And oh, by the way, he was a relative of Mary Todd Lincoln. You cannot make this stuff up. You cannot make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. It's absolutely crazy. And it's absolutely positively clear that Abraham Lincoln was not assassinated. And it's also crystal clear that focused life force energy is high consciousness on demand. Go to jeffreydaugherty.com. They'll send a high consciousness field to your phone, to your home. It's free for 30 days. You don't even have to list a credit card. Try it and see the difference it makes in your life. And once you do purchase it, it's less money than you'll lose in the cushions of your couch in a month. Very, very well worth it. You will not want to be without it once you have tried this great, great service. And I'm proud that they're one of our sponsors. It obviously shows that everything about this alleged assassination was a lie. Everything about this alleged assassination was a setup. Parker was a demonstrable lie, a false flag, a patsy. Booth, a demonstrable lie, a false flag, a patsy. And it is an absolute ludicrosity and a bald-faced lie that the president was only guarded by one guy. Evidence shows that President Lincoln was always guarded as one would expect a president of the United States to be guarded. Allan Pinkerton, the famous lawman, served as the head of the Union Intelligence Service when the war began. He had already foiled an earlier attempt at assassination on President Lincoln in Baltimore. Pinkerton's officers often worked undercover as Confederate soldiers and Confederate sympathizers. Who does that remind me of? Oh, yeah, John Wilkes Booth was a Confederate sympathizer. How about that? John Wilkes Booth was, in all likelihood, ladies and gentlemen, a member of Union intelligence. But he shot the president. No, he didn't. Try to keep up. Try to keep up. Pinkerton served on several undercover commissions and missions as a Union soldier, and he used the alias E.J. Allen. We need to look at that. Somebody needs to look at that and figure out, is that an anagram for something? Is that a little something or other? I don't know. We need to check that one out. I didn't think about that until just now. But the point is that the intelligence service was well established. The intelligence service was used to guarding the president. The intelligence service did guard the president, and the intelligence service was the predecessor of the U.S. Secret Service. So the idea that Lincoln was there with one guard inside is absolutely ludicrous. The idea that 200 guards were outside didn't come in until they heard a shot, a speech, and all that other crap is absolutely ludicrous. Abraham Lincoln was not assassinated, ladies and gentlemen. And if you need more proof, let's look at the forensic evidence or the lack of the forensic evidence. Amazingly, there's no autopsy photos of Abraham Lincoln. Supposedly, he had a death mask made, and wait to hear that story. But the experts who looked at the death mask say it's an obvious fake. And here's what they're hiding, ladies and gentlemen. Abraham Lincoln had a life mask made in February of 1865. He was allegedly assassinated in April of 1865. You know, I think Lincoln had a few things on his mind. The Civil War, it wasn't going well. Grant was bogged down. The battles were bloody. The attrition was horrible. The Union was losing its stomach for war. It was an illegal war anyway. They didn't need to conquer the South. It was Lincoln, again, being led and aided and abetted and charged by the Old Testament enthusiast. He was a crypto Old Testament enthusiast Jesuit, and I'm going to prove that to you. Not here today, but I will. So 2 months before this assassination, he just happens to get a life mask made. Wow, by a sculptor named Clark Mills. And then 2 months before the assassination, he gets this done, which is nuts. The faked death mask combined elements of that death mask and a death mask or a life mask that Lincoln had made earlier. So he had two made total during his time in the White House. And in making the combined copy, they lost a little bit of the detail of the real life mask. And that's why the death mask doesn't look right. A death mask would never have this splotching, which I guess is called a patina. And the death mask would have much more detail than this. This is an amalgamation of two life masks. How many life masks does it take to make a fake death mask? Well, evidently, if you're talking about Abraham Lincoln, it takes two. So there is no forensic evidence. So Jeff, what really happened? Well, here's kind of what really happened. And here's why it happened. In 2007, a medical study was done on Abraham Lincoln's face, the life mask, his medical records. And the study concluded that Abraham Lincoln suffered from multiple mucosal neuroma syndrome, which is a fancy way of saying that he had cancer. And had he not been assassinated in April of 1865, Lincoln would not have lived the duration of 1865. But they needed Lincoln to win the election because Jackson was a terrible orator. Jackson was very unpopular. Things were bogging down. The Civil War was looking bad. And it looked like it was very, very possible that if Lincoln didn't run because he was sick, that there's no way that Jackson could carry the presidency. They had to have Lincoln win in order to finish off the South, because if the Democrats had won that election, the Democrats were done fighting. They were over. They were the anti-war party in that election. And if the Democrats would have won, they would have negotiated terms of surrender with the South. We wouldn't have had the Fed. We wouldn't have had all this other stuff that's going on, but that's another show. So they convinced Lincoln that he couldn't resign. And when Grant's 1864 spring campaign, that's General Grant, turned into bloody stalemates and Union casualties mounted, the lack of military success wore heavily on Lincoln's reelection process or prospects. Many Republicans around the country feared that Lincoln would be defeated. Lincoln was so afraid that he would be defeated. Listen to what he did. Honest Abe, the greatest president, the lover of liberty, you know what he did? He signed a pledge. In other words, he signed an executive order that even if he lost the election, he was not going to give up the presidency until the Civil War was over and the South had been defeated. Do you understand the enormity of that, ladies and gentlemen? Abraham Lincoln said, I will not leave the White House. I will not cede the election to the new president until I have defeated the South. He was not going to leave the White House. He was not going to give up the presidency. They had to have Lincoln win. They had to have Lincoln stay in the presidency because they had to defeat the South in order for this foul takeover to take place. Yes, the South doing slavery was wrong. But when the South went down, we all became slaves, ladies and gentlemen, and we still are. And think of this. You want to talk about stealing an election? And it's interesting that we're talking about stealing an election as we go into the 2020 election cycle, and this travesty is happening in our nation's capital. But what the Lincoln-Jackson team did was, and what Congress did, inexplicably, was said to Confederate states or border states, if you are going to vote for Lincoln, or if the polling looked like they were going to vote for Lincoln, they would allow those states to vote in the U.S. presidential election. Louisiana did and went for Lincoln. What is interesting and special about Louisiana? They eat a lot of crawfish. They got a lot of Cajuns. Vampires like New Orleans. Oh, shit. Louisiana's a Catholic state. The parishes. Oh, it's funny that the Catholics of Louisiana voted for Lincoln, the Jesuit crypto Old Testament enthusiast. Very, very interesting. Huh. So any state that pledged and polled like they were going to vote for Lincoln, they were allowed to vote. If states said they wouldn't vote for Lincoln, they were not allowed to border states or Confederate states to vote. And did you know that even the votes of the state of Tennessee were thrown out? Jackson's hometown, because Lincoln and Jackson required all the citizens of Tennessee to sign a pledge that they would support the Civil War and continuance of it even after the election. This is how sure they were going to lose. And the people of Tennessee said not only no, but hell no. So you know what Congress did? They did not count the votes of the great citizens of the great state of Tennessee in the 1864 election. Wow. They drew up a script that made Lincoln a hero and a martyr. It scapegoated a Confederate sympathizer. They were masters of propaganda even then, ladies and gentlemen. They took a bad situation, turned it into a great one. And the myth of Honest Abe, again, Abrahamic faiths, was born. Lincoln's supposed assassination cemented the Union cause, finalized an end that was still in doubt. The Union was going to see it through. They killed our president. We're not going to give them peace now. Emotion created that acted to bring the North back together. After the assassination, there was a period of unity, and those behind the new president used that unity to promote not only the final days of the war, but the horrible indignities of Reconstruction, ladies and gentlemen. This is what really happened. This is a slide that shows you all of the proof that Abraham Lincoln was killed in Ford's Theater in 1865, April. There's all the proof right there, ladies and gentlemen. I'll give you a minute to copy that down. I'll give you a minute to copy that down. You got it? Okay, good. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been lied to. Abraham Lincoln was not assassinated. And I think I got one more show of proof, one more show's worth of proof to talk to you about. And then we'll be finished with this subject and we'll move on to something else. But it's just amazing to me that this stuff can happen. And it's even more amazing to me that even people that are students of history like myself, we don't look at it. We don't see it. They've already got us blinded. And even when we're looking for stuff in our community, we're still blinded and we still don't see. And I just don't get it. I just don't get it. Let's go ahead and go into the chat room and see what the great and smart people there are saying. I appreciate you being here. If you like this channel, please go ahead and subscribe. If you don't like the channel, if you think I'm dangerous, you should subscribe anyway, because I'm just getting started and you need to keep your eye on me. Give it a thumbs up to the video if you like it. Give it a thumbs down if you don't like it. And if you are a subscriber, make sure you still are, because a funny way of things being people being unsubscribed. Cynthia makes a good point relating to how could Lincoln's name not be Lincoln. Her family name was changed at Ellis Island just because somebody decided that they wanted to, the way that their name wasn't sufficient to them. Interesting stuff. Scotty Boy says, same old story. It exactly is. It's the same old story. So am I saying people were hiding stuff way back then? Yes, I am, Matthew. And you know that they probably were 100%. And what do you say to this evidence? What do you say to this evidence, ladies and gentlemen? Tracy Dyer's grandfather also was changed at Ellis Island. He was given a Jewish name at Ellis Island. Wow, that's very, very interesting. Mary Lincoln, Todd, Mary Lincoln. Oh, that's interesting. I think Rich is suggesting. I don't know what Rich is suggesting. That's very, very interesting. Nothing to see here, folks. Move along. Free Pepsi to the left. Does sound like CIA. CIA didn't exist, but it was definitely the Union Intelligence Service. Yeah, during the Civil War, no less. Come on, guys. Come on. Inept police officer not fired. What makes a great patsy? How do you know that you can make sure a guy shuts his mouth? Imagine that. Imagine that, ladies and gentlemen. You know, this is a very astute comment. It reminds String 66 of JFK. We're going to go next, after we finish this up, wrap this up. We're going to go to the similarities, eerie similarities between JFK and Abraham Lincoln. And then we're going to look into the unbelievable possibility that JFK wasn't assassinated either. But Jeff, we saw it. Did we? Did we see it? And how many people were actually there in Dealey Plaza to see it that day? Probably less than 10. Think of that. Think of that. Cynthia says, at least the guy didn't fall asleep. He went to get a beer. Yeah, the transcripts of the guy's trial are somewhere with Obama's birth certificate. The one from Kenya. Oh, it was the moon photographer. Rich, you are on a roll tonight, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, I've proven this before in another series about Lincoln, that Civil War was not about slavery. It does sound like a comedy, and they're laughing at us. And it pisses me off. It pisses me off. It really does. Makes me mad. Lincoln was a tyrant psychopath, no doubt about it. Lincoln was sketchy. The whole thing is sketchy. And Eyes Wide Shut found 20 cents in their underwear once. Well, guess what? Cynthia found a quarter in her underwear just tonight. So she's 5 cents richer than you are. How about that, ladies and gentlemen? A slap on the wrist for the president getting shot. Wow. I don't even want to talk to Abe Delaney. Even if he was here, I would. If he was on my front yard, I wouldn't open the blinds. Ooh, this is a great statement. Artie Thomas. Reminds you of Epstein's so-called suicide. Ooh, that's really, really good stuff. Really, really good stuff. The Lincoln assassination data was destroyed. That's a NASA joke. It'd be hard to bring it back again. The attempted assassinations of Reagan and Ford. Again, those are questionable. Great stuff. How weird is it to have not one but two life masks made? And how weird is it 60 days before a supposed assassination attempt? Crazy, crazy, crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. And what else do we got here, ladies and gentlemen? No wonder we've been so brainwashed throughout history. We've been lied to and programmed. Yes, indeed, we have. I don't think they want European Americans to know who they are, and for good reason. I agree with that 100%. I agree. Yeah, and no, that was Washington that couldn't tell a lie, not Lincoln. We need to look into Washington, don't we? Indeed, we do. Oh, Abe was the first president to abuse presidential power. Well, he was only the 16th. It took him a while to get started. Craziness, ladies and gentlemen. What else we got here? Interesting indeed. I agree, Tracy. The North did have slaves. Absolutely. The North had slaves after the Civil War. Figure that one out and get back to me. Jameis says, it was obviously the Russians. We know that, Lori. 100%. 100%. Harry, ahead of the curve, says, JFK wasn't assassinated either. They made us slaves. Yes, they did. Crypto Old Testament enthusiasts. Crypto Old Testament enthusiasts. What else we got? September 15, 1863, President Lincoln imposed martial law, allowed the president to suspend habeas corpus throughout the entire United States. How about that? How about that, ladies and gentlemen? It looks like Schiff's proof list, that last slide that we showed. Did you see Adam Schiff almost didn't make it out of the Capitol today? Those people were ready to lynch him by his pencil neck. They don't want to deal with the real people, ladies and gentlemen. They do not want to deal with real people. Ooh, Abraham, the first American devotio. Yes and no. I like where you're going with that. I like where you're going with that. Schools are indoctrinating people, and it ain't just black folks. They're indoctrinating all folks. Everything about Lincoln's assassination, says Elizabeth, assassination, mirrors Lincoln's. Yes, we're going to look at that. We're going to look at that. I think Epstein was alive, but I think he's dead now. I think he overlived his usefulness. That's my idea. That's my idea. So what else we got? Oh, that's a bad joke, Alex. That's funny. That's funny, but not really. YouTube has a problem with the word. I'm not sure what the word is, but anyway, we won't say it if YouTube has a problem with it. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Abraham Lincoln was not assassinated. And I'm going to go to just 3 of my sponsors every show, but this is the last one today. And what is pulsed electromagnetic field therapy? It's amazing stuff, ladies and gentlemen. It reduces inflammation, increases circulation and oxygenation, promotes faster healing, turns a 4 to 6 week groin pull into a 4 to 6 day healing in yours truly. Same thing with Cynthia for a torn muscle in her calf, relieves pain, improves mobility, and it works at the cellular level. It is amazing technology. It has been highly expensive and highly difficult to get a hold of. But if you want, you can go to energymedfit.com and get all the information that you need about it there. Or in a great show of integrity, all you can have to do is pick up the phone and either call or text Glenn Streeter, and he'll tell you all about it, including all of the other great products and services on energymedfit.com. And if you use Christian Whistleblower 1, I believe it is, or TCW1, you get a great discount. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know we're talking about a lot of crazy stuff. We're talking about stuff that some people would rather not talk about, but we are here to unindoctrinate ourselves. We're here to enable us to live life and life more abundantly. And that means facing life down and doing what others won't do, saying what others won't say, going where no man or woman have gone before in the truth movement, and rushing in where angels fear to tread. We go wall to wall, treetop tall, locked and loaded, border to border, coast to coast. We do. And we hit it hard. We don't pull any punches. Fight Club, you know what the first rule of that is? This is Cousins Club, and the first rule of this club is tell everybody about it. Folks, you're divine, you're sovereign, you're free. You don't have original sin. You don't have original sin. You've got the spark of divinity within. And you are winners. They say winners write history. Bullshit. We're winners, and we're making history. Making today better, making tomorrow even more beautiful. We are the last generation of real humans. I salute you with Cynthia for being here, seeking after truth. And folks, we absolutely, positively can win this thing. We just have to get busy.